Hello, my dear brothers and sisters. I love you all. I really do. A little feedback just on what's been happening, just to keep you all motivated and encouraged. We had our event last night. That was another event. We've got quite a few more in the works and planned. Last night's was a little bit disappointing, I must be honest. It wasn't like as big as I thought it was going to be. We had far too much food, which is not a complaint. It's saying thank you, Father. But we didn't have as many people that showed up as we thought. We originally thought it was going to be a much larger event. And but yeah, look, these things happen. This was our first endeavor into the boondocks, the outback, and it's a lot of lessons come with these things. You know, you in the city, yes, there's a lot of people that show up. You know, a lot of people, and also there's always so many. There's so many things related to how to market in the cities. In the outback, it's also a little bit more challenging because you don't know where these people are actually coming from. You don't know how close they are. You don't know if they're far away, etc. Just one little interesting story that came out of it was that the government refused us to be able to play and perform in their main park, a place called the Sound, the Northern Sound. They just would refuse to allow us to be in the Northern Sound under their big arena, their dome. They've got like a large dome called the Sound, the Northern Sound, and they didn't allow us to do that. Now the Northern Sound is right next door to the markets. What's interesting is that had we performed at the Northern Sound, the markets would have stayed open and we would have had a lot of people go between the markets and the event because they're right next to each other. And the markets would have benefited from it, and we would have benefited from it. It would have been really, really amazing. You know, there's 12,000 people in the town. But by relegating us to Purslow Park, which is kind of across the road, but it's a little bit out of the main traffic zone, the passing trade was not going to be big now. We landed up with, apparently we still had the biggest crowd in the night, but the markets had to close early because they had no business. So they had no business. And basically it's an indictment again on the government, on the system. If we had performed, because we had catered for being at a place like the Northern Sound, we would have definitely have fed, you know, literally thousands of people. So, but what happened was they refused us the large area with the passing trade, and in the end it hurt them because they landed up having a flop event. Their markets were literally forced to close early, and we had the largest crowd in the evening. So that was interesting. We were let down by a lot of people along the way, and I feel I've even let myself down. I let them down, and a lot of people. We just didn't perform as well as we should have. The event did not go exactly according to plan. I wish it had gone according to plan. I really do. So many things did not go exactly according to plan, but what can we do? You know, we learn lessons. We learn a lot of lessons when we do these things. We realize that you know, there's so many things that we realize. I'm starting to, I know what I'm about to say is so controversial, and I probably mustn't say it, because it's going to probably come back to bite me, and I probably must not say it. But this is very tricky, and it really is. But I know there's a train of thought. I'm not going to mention it by name. We all know what it's called. Christopher, Rosie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know the actual term that we use for this belief system. But I'm starting to believe that I really am. I'm starting to sort of get this idea that some will be saved, others will never be saved. I really mean that. As hard as that sounds to believe, you know, salvation because I'm seeing signs of this. I'm actually seeing evidence of this everywhere. I'm starting to see that, you arrive in a town and certain people get saved. Certain people go out and get their family members and they bring them in and they all get saved. It's incredible. It's like they were destined to be saved. And then other people they just will never get saved. They will not get saved. They're too proud. They don't understand the message. For them, any speaking of salvation is foolish. We know this from the Bible. It says that very clearly. The work of the cross, God's crucifixion on the cross, is really just nonsense to them. They don't understand it. They think it's foolishness. For them, anything we talk about in terms of, having your title deed transferred from the enemy Lucifer to Jesus Christ, they just don't get it. They just think it's nonsense. They don't believe in it. They think the whole thing is just hammed or made up or some kind of conspiracy or some weird thing that doesn't apply to them, and that they can hold back and do nothing about salvation. They literally think, well, you know what? There's plenty of time. I'm not going to give up on my lifestyle, the kind of person I am, my sexual orientation, my my whatever, my alcoholism, my my lying, my stealing, my cheating, my whatever. They think that doesn't apply to me. It's not what I'm called to. I'm going to have fun and just live out my life and not worry about this thing that they talk about. It's like they stay on the outskirts. And I'm really starting to believe I'm starting to believe that some people were predestined to be saved and others were not. I know that sounds hectic, and both you, Christopher and Rosie, know exactly what I'm talking about. You even know the term that's used for people who believe in that it's all predestined, and that somehow, for whatever reason, there are some people, and I was watching Frank Turek on Cross-Examined, and he said something really interesting, because people said, and I've heard this a few times now, and every time I hear it, it sort of resonates. It makes me go, he's right. I have this feeling he's absolutely right. Because they ask him this question again and again. There's this question that comes up, which is, what about people in all these other countries that have never heard the gospel? Or they may have just heard it once. They may have just heard a message about it or whatever. Are they not saved? Are there people, like in some countries, that are just, because of their isolation from the gospel, they just never heard about it. Why would they be condemned into eternity? Like, why? And Frank Turek has this very interesting explanation that lasts quite a few minutes, but he eventually nuts it down to God, and it says biblically, God places people he places people in places, in situations, geographically, that would just not have been saved. And when I heard that, I saw that as sort of a milestone, as a building block of what this dispensation out there believes in, which is, Calvinism, really, which is that some people are not going to get saved. They just won't be. In fact, they're put in positions where even if they were in the whatever part of the world and they got total access to the gospel, they would not have been saved, because they would not have assimilated the message. They would not have, which tells me that it's almost as if God already, he does, of course, but it's a direct proof that God has certain people in mind for salvation and others not, or that he has certain people that will get saved soon, or much, much sooner than others. Others will have to go through much, much harder levels of tribulation, of real intensity of pain to actually get the message, to turn away from their evil and wicked thoughts. And sometimes people are not even wicked, they just don't have a heart for it. They don't have a taste for it, which is really fascinating, right? Because you start to think, is that true? God, is it possible that some people genuinely are not able to understand this or see this? Well, yeah, I'm starting to see that. I'm starting to feel this. I'm starting to, every day, I'm getting a feeling because I'm now seeing a lot of people. You got to remember, I keep coming across many people up at the rock face. When you speak to them and you tell them about the gospel, some people almost invariably automatically just understand it straight away. They don't even need to have read the Bible. They just get it instinctually through faith. You know, they understand the message of grace. They get the concept straight away, and they immediately give their lives to Christ. Immediately they repent. They're sorry for what they've done. They really feel in their hearts that the way they lived is not right, and that they need to do the right things, and that they are accountable, and all of those things. You know, they immediately get it. It takes them a very short space of time to get it. Whereas some people I've known now for, you know, more than a decade, and they just still don't get it. They just do not get it. They don't get it. They're still stuck in that place where they don't see it. And I keep thinking, maybe they do get it, but they just don't want to acknowledge it, because it means that they have to change their lives. They have to change their lifestyle. They're just not ready for it. But true as anything, they don't get it. They just actually don't get it. And I can see that they're trying to figure it out. And sometimes they're not even trying to figure out. Sometimes they actually don't care, and they don't want to even go down that subject path, which leads to the end of a friendship, or at the most extreme, and at the least extreme, just people who just avoid you, you know, because they don't like your message. Your message is too confronting, and it's too, you know, self-reflective. It still asks them to look at themselves, and it's too much. They just don't want it. And it's hard, you know. I try to present this message in a beautiful, loving, kind, caring, gorgeous way, that they get it. They become illuminated by the scriptures, or some of what's happening in the scriptures, you know. And many a time they'll go, what? That's in the Bible, that story. That's an incredible story. I didn't know that. Because normally I tell them the story, and I go, do you know, when I tell you that story, can you hear the story? I mean, does it sound like something you know? And they're like, no, it sounds like something familiar, but I'm not sure what that story is. And then I'll go, it's right out of the Bible, which turns into a, whoa, you know, did he just mention the Bible in a conversation? And it's like, yeah, I just did. But what's interesting is that they when they hear that story, they go, that's in the Bible? Really? And I'm like, yeah, that's in the Bible. That's one of the stories in the Bible. And that's just in, you know, the book of Daniel, or that's just in, that's just in Isaiah, or whatever, right? They don't realize that that's a tiny little story. There's like thousands of stories biblically. There's just so many extraordinary stories that unravel human nature, unravel the love of God, unravel God's pursuit of humanity, God's, you know, decided role in the redemptive work of Jesus Christ to bring about salvation to people, you know, mass populations that rebelled against him. And how important it is that we turn to our Christ, you know, our Savior. So I really am in this place, you know, more and more in the belief that it's kind of for somebody, it's not for others. Some were meant to have been saved from time immemorial, from the very beginning, from the foundations of the building of the earth. Some were meant for salvation, others weren't. And this isn't an elitist comment. It's not something I'm saying because I feel privileged or whatever it is. I'm saying this because I really believe, without a shadow of a doubt, that we are everything is happening very specifically for a reason, right? Nothing is by chance. Nothing is per chance, as they say in the classics. Everything is meant. everything is predestined. And this is one of the beliefs of Calvinism, which is very, I've never believed in that. I've always thought, no way, everyone has an equal chance at salvation. But we can see this on the visible spectrum. We can see this in front of us, that not every single person is predestined for salvation, or they're going to only be entered into that, lottery draw, it seems, sometime in the future, because they're not there yet, and they can't be there yet. They're not there. I know people so many people around me that are, they're not there. I have no idea how they're going to get there. There's one lady specifically I'm thinking about right now. There's actually many, but there's one lady very specifically I'm thinking about who I don't know how many times I've told her about the Bible in a very roundabout way, because I can't be confrontational with her. I can't tell her outright. She just totally declines it, not interested, she's not going there, etc. But I would like to see her saved. She's a good lady, she's a good person, but nope, she's got no taste for it, nothing. In fact, the minute you talk about it to her, she feels like we really need to change the subject. It's like that. And I'm sort of going, I don't know how this is going to work out, because from a biblical perspective, I'm not seeing how she's ever going to change her mind. She is, and has she got anything against God? No, she's not coming at it from a place of revenge. She's this, what she believes to be, and I think, she's a smart woman, but she's this academically endowed person who could just never, ever believe in a God. As far as she's concerned, somewhere back in her programming, it was said to her that, God was a myth, and she believes it. She's like, yeah, whatever, it's not true. And that little piece of programming is sitting inside her HTML code of her life, and she can't undo it. She can't cut it out. She can't edit it out of her, codified sequence. She just can't do it. She has no idea how to. And the funny thing is, as the more I tell her about life and about the reflectivity that we see biblically played out and in front of us, especially through prophecy, and how important it is to not be biblically illiterate right now, she still cannot see it, can't get it. So yeah, I'm intrigued, I'm astounded, and I'm waiting to see how this next chapter of humanity's progress unfolds. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how some people will come into the direct knowledge of Christ before they take the mark in their DNA. Their DNA changes, because after that they're irreconcilable with God. They cannot be saved. They're not savable anymore, and that's very scary.